Namaste. Let me speak about a word that has been used so often, rather abused, very frequently in modern times. And all that comes from the ignorance of the knowledge of that word in its true spirit. What am I speaking about? I'm speaking about dharma. If you were to go to, let's say, China, you will hear the term called Tao. Some may call it Tao. It has a typical pronunciation. And the translation of that is given as the way. What is this way? And what is this dharma? So we'll come to various aspects of this word. But first, let's consider a phenomenon. What happens in the universe? As we sit pretty on the ground or wherever we are, you will also notice that there is a force that is keeping you there. This force in turn is emerging out of a particular body that we call as the earth. This earth is a part of a much larger galaxy, and in that galaxy there are millions of bodies. And in that galaxy, those bodies are again balancing the bodies in the rest of the universe. All of this goes on and on and on, 24/7, 365 days a year, and without any rest. How does this happen? There certainly is a power at work, or rather, let me say, many powers, many forces at work that are balancing each other perfectly, isn't it? Now, we may refer to it as gravitational force or whatever you wish. But the fact is that each one is balancing the other, so every body is rotating around its own axis and revolving around another body. In our galaxy, they are all revolving around the sun. And there may be many such suns in the universe. Now, this is all so exciting. Now, go inside the body. Inside the body also, we know that you are not, I am not exactly what we look. What does that mean? We are made up of matter. That matter is in turn made up of all sorts of atomic bodies, smaller parts. All of them are in the same kind of motion that we described in the universe. And they are continuing to keep us healthy and going all the time. My dear friends, this kind of existence, this kind of movement that sustains, that upholds, that continues to maintain second after second, minute after minute, week after week, year after year, and era after era is referred to as dharma. So in Sanskrit there is a phrase which says Dharyate iti dharma. Let me repeat that. Dharyate iti dharma. That which upholds, that which keeps in the perfect state that it should be, that is dharma. Now you understand why it is called the way. For example, we take the sky for granted, right? The sky is where it should be. The earth is where it should be. The netherworld is where it should be. All of these forces are coming together to make life perfect for you and me. This is dharma. Now, if this is dharma, let's go deeper into what it could further mean. It basically tells us that every single element in this vast universe of ours has a basic nature. That nature is dharma. For example, a celestial body, gravitational force. A cube of sugar, sweetness. The sun, to give light and heat. A plant, as it grows into a tree, to give shade, and so on and so forth. Every single element, every single being has its dharma. So the first meaning of dharma is the core nature. What else can it be? So if we said that everything is maintained in a certain way to make it perfect, that means someone is at work to keep things going the way it should be, isn't it? Now, in the universe, the overall scheme of things, there is dharma at play. But what about in the world in which you and I live? What about the home? What about the office? What about the child's school? What about the roads? What about anything else? There, it needs to be maintained by people like you and me. Hence, we have a phrase again in Sanskrit which goes, Dharmo rakshati rakshitaha. Dharmo rakshati rakshitaha. What does that mean? It means that those who ensure that dharma is protected, dharma is preserved, are themselves preserved. Now what does that mean? If we were to keep the office the way it should be, where people follow all the rules, regulations, the ethics, the principles, the code of conduct, would it not be a better place for each one of us? Now that's as far as office is concerned. Let's look at the roads. If everyone were to follow and maintain the traffic rules, then the roads become ideal for us to drive and for the pedestrian to walk. Otherwise, it's chaos. Hence, we are only helping ourselves by following the dharma. So this is the second meaning. And you could say, therefore, dharma also means responsibilities and duties. Now, Acharya Chanakya took it to another level. Now, he was the man who was responsible for creating Akhanda Bharat, or an undivided Bharat, a united Bharat for the first time. And at the helm of it was a young boy called Chandragupta Maurya, who went on to become a Samrat. Now, one of the instructions he gave that young boy was Dharmasya Moolam Arthaha. Now, what could that mean? Dharmasya Moolam Arthaha. And he also said before that, Sukhasya Moolam Dharmaha. Sukhasya Moolam Dharmaha. सुख का मूल ही धर्म है. सुख का मूल ही धर्म है मतलब क्या? Your sukha is not standing for short-term pleasures. That's not sukha. That's probably ananda and just in the moment. Sukha is that which is long-term, that which is sustained, that which is preferably eternal. Such sukha can be referred to as prosperity, where everything is the way it should be, not just for the individual, but for the kingdom, for the domain of leadership. It could be an organization, it could be a country, it could be a housing society, it could be a home. So, agar wahan par sukh chahiye, then he says the basis of that is dharma. Now, dharma over there means purpose. What is this purpose? Purpose means where the individual who is responsible for domain or who takes charge for that domain, whether a nation or an organization or a school, understands that the purpose of that role is to give prosperity and happiness to every individual concerned in that domain. To bring long-term happiness, to bring long-term satisfaction, to think of the welfare of others and not of self. So, Sukhasya Moolam Dharmaha means prosperity will emerge only by understanding and then realizing the purpose of that particular leader. How beautiful this is. Now, please understand, what does it mean for you and me as individuals? I sometimes say that the performance evaluation systems and organizations should not run on targets, it should run on dharma. And this makes people wonder, what am I saying? It means that if every single individual is allowed to recognize his or her larger purpose, based on that, the responsibilities and duties that emerge from it, and all of this is aligned with the true nature, the core, the strength of that individual. Don't you think that workplace will become so beautiful where the individual is self-governed and therefore self-evaluated? Where is the need for someone to come and watch over, control, and direct that individual at work? So, dharma, my dear friends, is the most basic thing which makes the world go round, which sustains the earth, which makes day-to-day living possible. Let's learn about a few nuances of dharma. Now, dharma is about upholding, keeping up to maintain the existence of something. Hence comes the concept of balance. So, dharma would also mean the balance of things. Now, there is the example of Bali, right? And how Mahabali, the grandson of Prahlad, he was a very righteous ruler. And he did everything that he could for his people. The governance was of an ideal kind. And perhaps from that thought itself emerged the idea in his mind that maybe I should take charge of all the three worlds, it is said. And so, quite easily, he managed to also conquer, it is said, the skies as well as the earth. Now, Mahabali was a Rakshas. That means his original realm is the netherworld. However, he went on to conquer Prithvilok, which is the earthly domain, as well as Svargalok, which is the heavenly domain. Now, these three domains came under his control. But please understand that here is where the balance begins to tilt. Because remember, we said everything has its place, everything has a specific property. And that's where it has to belong, that's what it has to remain limited to. For example, if the rivers were to flow beyond their banks, we call it a flood. If the seas were going to destroy and go beyond its own limits, then it will cause a tsunami. If the earth doesn't stay where it is, it will cause an earthquake. If the clouds were not to remain controlled in the amount of rain, then it will cause floods. You get the idea? So there is a balance to everything. And therefore, when this happened, when Mahabali conquered all the three realms, it is said, Hahakar mach gaya, which means that the residents, the citizens of these three lands, not so much the Netherlands because that's where he belonged, but the rest of the two other domains came to Vishnu and said, please save us. Otherwise, there is going to be chaos and eventual destruction of all the realms. So what did Vishnu do? He took what we are told is the Vaaman Avataar. And as a Vaaman Avataar, he came and he appeared in front of Bali. And Bali was anyways a devotee of Vishnu. And so he was very delighted to see him. For once also he did not think twice that if Vishnu has come to him, then he must certainly do whatever is called for. It was actually his guru Shukracharya who told him that Vaman is Vishnu in disguise. So please be wary. He will pull out some trick. He may destroy you. And here was Mahabali who said that if it is so, it is my Lord, I will give whatever it takes. And Vaman, we are told, asked for merely 3 steps. 3 steps of land, 3 steps is all that he asked for. But in these 3 steps, in the first 2 steps, Entire earth was covered. In the second step, the entire sky was covered. What remains now? So Vaman asked Mahabali, where should I keep my third foot? Because I don't have any place left to keep the third step. And he said, oh Lord, you can use my head. And that's when the Lord kept his foot on the head of Mahabali, his own devotee, and he was pushed back into the earth, into the Patal Lok where he originally belonged. Now, my dear friends, I want to tell you the significance of this story is not that he wanted to destroy Mahabali, not at all. In fact, Mahabali was allowed to come back every year to meet his people. And that is celebrated by way of Onam, isn't it? So it's very, very beautiful. And Mahabali is considered till today a very just ruler. But it was the balance which had to be restored to the world. As I explained earlier, if the heavenly forces or the forces from below the ground was to go awry, then the rest of the world cannot sustain. And hence this had to be done. Now this too is dharma, right? So dharma is a very nuanced thing. Therefore, let's take it now to the corporate world. And my conversations with hundreds of leaders, the more higher you go in an organization, the leaders' problems are very different. And the leaders' problems are generally by way of dilemmas. And those dilemmas don't come by the way of a choice between good and bad. That would be easy, or at least easier. The dilemmas come between the good and the better, or the better and the best, or the bad and the worst, the worst and the worst. The choice has to be made between two which are not so distinct. But the leader has to make a choice and decide what works better. I remember once a very, very well-known political leader, when he was not in power, he had spoken about a typical dilemma of a social leader, someone with authority at the district level. And he spoke about how there is a dilemma between the people who are asking for water on an immediate basis. And those will need pumps. But you know what pumps do? Those pumps in turn, the water pumps, they cause the water table to go down. The tube wells actually, not just pumps, but tube wells. They cause the water table to go down. So in the long term, the water table going down is going to cause a further problem. Now, if you were to tell the people that, look, it will take a while to rejuvenate, to recharge the water table so that it is available to you, but this water will be available to you after a year, maybe 2 years. The people are not interested, and the chances are that they will throw you out of power. What do? This is also an ethical dilemma which we can refer to as dharma. So, taking it to leadership, my dear friends, dharma becomes extremely nuanced. And remember, it is not as easy as the wars in our itihas which tell us the wars between good and bad. No, these are far more tricky wars where one has to make the choice between the short term and the medium term, or the medium term and the long term. So that's another concept of dharma that all leaders must keep in mind. And as we think more, as we dwell more, as we study more on dharma, you will get multiple ways of how to approach a particular problem. So dharma is something to be studied, which Indian wisdom, our Shastra, offers in plenty. The more we study this, the more we get to know what may work in a certain situation. Only learning from experiences of the past, of our days of yore, of the medieval ages, and also of today's times will give you a true understanding of how Dharma operates. So, Dharma in sum refers to the core principle, the core nature. It refers to the duties and responsibilities that emerge out of that core nature, and it also refers to the larger purpose of serving those people where you are responsible for that particular domain. All this and the dilemmas that occur with respect to making these happen can be called dharma. So, dharma is not static, dharma is dynamic. Dharma is not a destination, dharma is a journey. Dharma is not a straight line, dharma is a cycle. I want to end with clarifying a certain concept. You know, many a times in the Gita and otherwise used very loosely is the term called Dharm Yudh. And many think Dharma Yuddha is about religion, far from the truth. And that is what has really messed up humanity itself. The conflict emerges from ignorance of this term called Dharma Yudh. So, Dharma Yudh basically means that which goes on within us. The fight between that which is right, that which is ethical, that which is my duty, that which is obvious, with that which is distracting me, the lesser call, the lesser purpose, my desires, and so on and so forth. So, Dharma Yuddha is the fight within, the war within. And this war goes on in every individual. Collectively, when people, those who understand the purpose, come in conflict with those who do not understand their purpose and are therefore only fighting for themselves, it becomes a Dharma Yudh. So, I hope this has clarified to all of us the meaning of Dharma. I hope each of us will follow our Dharma and make the world a better place. Dhanyavad.